And we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you're tuning in today. It's the 26th of September 2019, and you are watching another live SEMrush webinar. Today, we'll be talking about the best dashboards for uncovering customer behavior on your website. I am joined by the fantastic Clayton Wood and Jason Barnard. Guys, do you just want to quickly introduce yourselves? Clayton?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Clayton Wood. I am going to talk a little bit about some of what we can do to look at customer behavior. I've been doing SEO for about 10 years. Jason?
Yeah, well, I've been doing SEO for 20 years, so I'm significantly older than you, I think. I come from the world of music. I'm a double bass player and musician. I'm also used to make cartoons. I was a blue dog in a kid's cartoon. So SEO is my third job.
Nice. Excellent.
So I love it just as much as making movies and making music. Cool. So SEO digital marketing is great. It's really interesting.
Wicked. Right. So for everyone who's tuning in today, just let us know where you're watching and commenting from. It's always interesting to see where our audience is today. And just a quick little promo for SEMrush. We've got the Global Marketing Day coming up. It's a 24-hour event on October the 30th. And it's going to be expected to be 40,000 attendees, 24-hour period, 50 plus speakers. I know, Clayton, you're one of the hosts and you're one of the panelists, Jason. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. I'm going to be in New York.
I'm going to be doing it live from the San Francisco office. So you're in New York, Jason? Okay.
Excellent. So yeah, it's across
I'll be in
cities.
New York for the...
Oh, no, go on, Jason.
So I'll be in New York, so we won't meet face to face, Clayton, but I'll be rooting for you because you're going to be on after me, aren't you?
I think so.
And so for anyone who wants to know, it's going to be live studios in Sydney, London, San Francisco, and New York. I'll pop a link in the YouTube comments. So if you want to register, it's well worth it. It'll be a wealth of knowledge. As I say, it's over a 24-hour period, so it'd be interesting to see whether you could stick around and watch it for the whole 24 hours. Remember to follow the hashtag on Twitter. Drop us any questions. Please drop us any questions in the YouTube comments. We'll get through as many as we can today. Answer as much as we can. Just to let you guys know, this is actually a second part of a two-part webinar series. The first part we did was a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you just want to run quick through that, Clayton, for everyone who missed that?
Sure. Yeah, so this is the second part of a two-part webinar. Like Tristan said, I'm going to try and make it so that it works independently by itself. The first one, we talked quite a lot about tracking and analytics and how to sort of uncover what people are doing and how that affects sort of the SEO. This one is all around customer behavior on your website. So at the end of this one, I'm going to show some Google Analytics dashboards, and we're going to have a healthy discussion about if we think customer behavior affects SEO.
And so remember, guys, if you've got any questions or input around that, please just jump in the comments. We'd be interested to hear your side of the story. So let's just see how many people we've got rolling in at the moment. Great to see that we've got people from all around the world: Dubai, Brazil, Mongolia, South Africa. Wow. Yes, we've got quite a few people already here. Clayton, do you want to jump into your presentation?
Sure, let's do it. So Tristan, where are you tuning in from?
Well, I'm down in actually sunny Brighton today. It is actually sunny.
Sunny Brighton. All right. Yeah. I happen to be in Florida today. And Jason, how about you? Where are you tuning in from?
I almost forgot where I was. I'm in Rome.
You're in Italy. Awesome. That's a great place.
Yeah. Doing as the Romans do.
Nice.
Excellent. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to jump into this. And this presentation, I sort of had the idea to walk through it. It's about 20 slides long. I'll try and spend a minute or two on each slide. We'll go 15 to 20 minutes. I've asked Jason to discuss with me a little bit about what he thinks on a couple of sections of this. So we're going to stop and sort of have a discussion around some of these things that somebody that's been in the industry 20 years probably has a great context around some of this. So let's get started. Over the years in my career, there's a couple of key metrics that I've learned really help uncover customer behavior. And I've put them together and found a couple of dashboards that I think give a lot of insight and tell the story of what the folks on your website and in your leads funnel are doing. So that's why we call this webinar the best dashboards for uncovering customer behavior. A little bit about me. I've been lucky enough to co-found a couple of SEO agencies that had some success. I've worked on a lot of marketing campaigns. You can do a little more research if you want to about me by just typing me in to the interwebs. And before we get started, I want to make a commitment. I want to make sure that everybody learns something. If we touch on a piece of this webinar that you want to expand on or want more information about, I'd love for you to reach out and tell me that you want more information about this or that, or can we have a discussion? I'm happy to share my knowledge. I'm a believer that information should be shared. So I'm a big open source guy. And because that's my belief system, I want to share it. So feel free to contact me with anything that you've got, and I want to make sure that you learned something. Okay, so let's talk about the best dashboards for uncovering customer behavior. Fair warning, at the end of this, I'm going to give away the dashboards or just share the link to the dashboard. Some of them aren't ones that I created, but I found, and I'll go through 3 of them at the end. They're all in Google Analytics, and I think they really give some great context to customer behavior. In the last webinar, in part 1 of this, we did how to uncover not provided keywords. If you've been in SEO for a while or a webmaster, you've known that over the last 4 or 5 years, Google has just totally shut down almost that keyword data in Google Analytics and has replaced it with a not provided label there. There's a couple of tools that we learned how last time to uncover that behavior. And these dashboards that we're going to show at the end of this one work best when you've got that system in place in your Google Analytics. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. All right, here's the deal. We're 4 parts and we'll run through them. Customer behavior, how does it affect SEO, how to read it, and the dashboards that I was talking about. And there's a pro tip for all of this, that uncovering this data and looking at the behavior of your users on your website is only the first step. This may seem obvious to a bunch of you, but I want to drill it in because it's that important. You've got to do something with it. And I've got a couple of tips for action items on how to optimize once you know the customer behavior. But uncovering it is really only the story. What you do with it after that, that's what affects your business's bottom line. All right, so what does customer behavior affect? The obvious stuff. It affects conversions, right? This is a snapshot of a heat map. You can see where all of the clicks are. You can see where the customers like to click and don't like to click. That kind of behavior will affect how they perceive your brand, how they interact with your brand, whether they buy your products, whether they sign up. So obviously the conversion is number 1. That's what it affects. Number 2 is sort of this one that's debatable these days. Does customer behavior affect SEO? So this is a screenshot of just the typical SEMrush dashboard, which you're probably familiar with. And I'd love to sort of stop here and ask everybody what they think or how much they think customer behavior affects their SEO or their organic rankings. We'll get into it deep here in the next couple of slides, but before we do, I'd love to ask Jason. Jason, when we talked yesterday or this week in practice for this webinar, you had some pretty interesting opinions about this, and I know things have changed the webinar, the algorithm release that just happened a couple of days ago with Google is a huge change. Do you think that customer behavior affects the organic rankings of a website?
Yeah, I mean, a few kind of really interesting points have come up over the last couple of weeks. Today I was talking to Andrea Volpini from WordLift here in Rome, and he's 100% on board click-through rate affects rankings. He has absolutely no doubt about that. I was talking to Gary Ilias, who said, but we can't rely on click-through rate, because if we use click-through rate, we're going to say goodbye to personalization, which is kind of a nice argument, but it doesn't go all the way. I think what he was saying is Gary Ilias being very extreme, because he likes doing that. But he's basically saying we can't rely on it too much, because personalization will go out the window. So my guess is it does influence, but it isn't a very strong signal in most cases, simply because it's such a messy signal for Google to deal with. And it has so many downsides, especially in this idea of personalization, which is where Google really want to go. And I do get Gary's idea that if they rely on it heavily, personalization is going to be a big, big issue. And the second point is something I saw Jono Alderson from Yoast talking about, ranking signals, and basically saying, what is a ranking signal? And he uses a really nice example of saying, for example, for a restaurant, is the food they buy from the suppliers a ranking signal? Is the chef they have a ranking signal? And the answer is no, not directly. But the fact that they're buying quality food and the fact that that chef is a very good chef means that people are very satisfied. They're satisfying the customers, and those signals come through to Google and affect the rankings. And then the third point, which is something I've been thinking about, I was talking to Greg Gifford about local search, and this is incredibly interesting, is anybody who has been in local search is in a really good position today for the search in the rest of the world, as it were. Local search has always been based on entities, and local search has always been based on customer behavior and customer satisfaction. So those 3 points for me indicate that customer behavior has to be a very important aspect, whether it's direct or indirect, whether it's a heavy influence or a light influence, and whether how much of an influence it is in different circumstances and different contexts is all up for debate. But it is clear that if you don't satisfy your customers, if your customers are not acting in a positive manner towards your business offline or online, then you're going to be sending out negative signals to Google, and it isn't going to help your rankings. And I just remembered one more point I was thinking as I walked past the Vatican, which sounds pretty cool, was that if a result comes up onto page 1, and it's one of the results that gets click-throughs, it's not one of these results that don't get the click-throughs, and the other results in that page are getting clicks and you're not, it's incredibly logical for Google, and it's obvious that Google will drop it down and pull something up to something else up to that first page to see if it works better. So in that sense, click-through rate does. If you don't have a click-through rate on a search that has clicks, you're dead.
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest thing that we can do is sort of piece together the breadcrumbs that sort of tell that story that you're talking about. Google doesn't have something that publishes all of the ranking signals, but there's so much data out there by SEMrush, by some of the top news sources, that you can see whether it affects it or not. I love the point about indirectly affecting it. Mm-hmm. And this sort of reminds me about your podcast. This is everything that you do is with SEO is AEO, right?
Yeah, I mean, I talk to the really smart people in each kind of niche area of SEO or digital marketing, in fact, now, like Jono Alderson, for example, or Andrea Volpini, who I mentioned earlier on, and get them to talk to me about it, which gives me a phenomenal amount of information from really smart people. And luckily, when I've interviewed them, I've got quite a good memory, and I can bring this back up and say, actually, this links to that, and that links to that. Exactly. And I think get a nice picture that hopefully I can express in a way that makes it digestible for everybody else.
Excellent. Let's follow some of those breadcrumbs. The last thing.
Sorry, I do love the idea of breadcrumbs. That's a brilliant way of putting it.
Let's follow some of them. I pulled a few out when I was doing the research for this, and I think they make pretty compelling cases for, yes, customer behavior affects SEO. The biggest thing, I think we can all agree, that customer behavior affects is the business's bottom line. And this is the point that Jason was making with the restaurant and the quality ingredients, or the quality of the skill of the cook. It's critical for business in general. And I'll close with that. One of the breadcrumbs is how RankBrain works. And the slide that you're seeing now is an idea of sort of the flow of how people search, what happens when they search, what does Google show on the search results page, and then Google answering the question, did this page satisfy the user, yes or no? If you think about how Google could tell if a page satisfies the user or not, one of the things would be click-through, right? So I agree with Jason that if you're on this search result or the query, and you're trying to rank for it, and it's a query that would get a lot of click-throughs, and you're the result that's not getting CTR, then it would stand to reason that the ranking might go down. Another breadcrumb is by SEMrush itself. In 2017, and I couldn't fit the whole report on this slide deck, but if you look it up, SEMrush in 2017, 2 years ago, released top ranking signals, and there's probably 30 or 40 on the list, but at the very top is what I've screenshot here, and squared off in red is visits to the website, time on the site, pages per session, bounce rate. This is all customer behavior. Under that starts the typical stuff that you would think it might be, like backlinks, and then even lower is things like on-page, metadata, content, things like that. So it's interesting that 2 years ago, SEMrush was, evangelizing this customer behavior, either directly or indirectly affects SEO.
Yeah, could I just quickly say something about that, because there is a big argument in the SEO community about does correlation mean causation, and kind of people throw their arms up and say, well, of course it doesn't. But in fact, that example of the cook and the quality food that Jono gave me is really interesting, saying it doesn't matter if it causes it directly or not. The fact is there is a correlation, and it is certainly influencing it. So that idea of direct causation is a null point, in my opinion.
Did you see the Rand Fishkin survey that came out a couple of weeks ago, Jason, about where he interviewed, it looks like over 1,500 digital marketers' opinions on ranking signals? Have you seen this report?
I saw it, but it flew under my radar. I forgot to read it, and it's now too old for me to remember.
August, yes.
So please do tell me.
Well, this is the top sort of section of it. The top one being relevance of overall page content. It's interesting and pretty obvious, but let's qualify this. This is 1,500 plus opinions of digital marketing people. So people like us. So it's not Google. It's just what do the industry folks think, and a voting system where people voted for the most to the least important ranking signals. Now, there's nothing on, and the list, again, it goes much farther down than this, and you can probably find it if you type in Rand Fishkin Google rankings or something like that. The ones I thought were interesting, they don't specifically say customer behavior. Most of them are not. But the two arrows here are ones that I thought could be considered customer behavior, because the page's perceived expertise, the authority, trust, maybe that's measured by click-through ratio. Maybe that's measured by time on site. I don't know. So pretty interesting that this brand new one sort of hints to a few areas where it might be customer behavior. Do any of these look surprising to you, Jason? The relevance or the quality of the linking sites? Is it surprising to you that backlinks are extremely important?
Yeah, I think there's also a problem that Google moves forwards. The algorithms change, but the industry doesn't necessarily change sufficiently fast. In France, for example, where I've been doing a lot of my SEO, buying links and net linking is the only thing people talk about. And when you talk to somebody like Dave Davis, who's a brilliant guy who talks all about entities in search and entity-based search, he's saying, okay, whether it's important or not, if you can get the links between two pages that are entities, that are incredibly well related, that make a lot of sense, that are logical connections between them, whether backlinking continues to be very important or not doesn't matter, because you're linking entities and you're making those very strong connections that Google can understand. And if I come back to the idea of, is user behavior a ranking signal? Maybe not, but it doesn't actually matter, because at the end of the day, if your bottom line is being improved by improving customer satisfaction on your site, you're making a win. And the fact that indirectly those customers keep coming back is going to affect Google, is going to make Google think better. And if you then look at the, Bill Strauss was talking about the quality signal through repeat visits to a local shop. We're coming back to local SEO and Greg Gifford again. They track the Android phones, they track Google Maps. And if I go back to the same coffee shop that's in my area, time and time again, that's a quality signal. That's a patent that Bill Strauss was looking at. So they are looking at customer behavior in local search. And if we go back to what I was saying earlier on, if you're in local search today, you're probably, or you've been in local search, sorry, for the last few years, you're in a very good position today, because that Google is currently pushing out this algorithm to work more and more in the way that Google local search has been working for years. So Google local search is based on customer behavior, is based on customer satisfaction with the reviews and so on and so forth, and is now starting to be based on repeat visits. So whether or not it's the case right now that it's an incredibly strong factor, it's an incredibly strong influence, it's going to become one whether we like it or not.
Have you ever done, or I'm sure you've heard, the conspiracy theorists, I don't know if this is a proper label, but the folks that say that customer behavior affecting SEO organic rankings means that if I dump a bunch of money into a particular page with paid ads, that would also increase the organic search.
Yeah, I mean, but this is kind of coming onto the, maybe not black hat, but grey hat, is saying we can influence by buying activity. But the other thing is Google's brought in the new tag, which is user-generated content and advertising. And that's possibly a way for them to avoid that manipulation, or maybe not avoid it, but certainly reduce it. And obviously we're going to say, okay, people aren't going to put that tag in place. But if enough people do put it in place, Google will be able to identify the types of HTML that surround this type of content and be able to reasonably reliably identify it on all sorts of different sites. So that's another kind of SEO old wives' tale, is saying if we don't put it in place, Google can't figure it out. Or if I don't put it in place, Google won't figure it out. And in fact, Google is working on such a massive scale.
Totally.
Saying, we'll give you this tool, and it will give us enough information to be able to figure it out for most sites. So yeah, I think Google are kind of preparing the ground for that kind of cheating.
Absolutely. And this is just evidence that Google and technology as a whole is just moving past all of this manually driven, signaling. They've come out recently and said that there's no need to, or they didn't say there's no need to, but they said that they're only using the no follow instruction as a hint, basically saying we'll follow it if we feel like it's relevant based on our algorithm and based on what we know around what site is the link on and what site is it linking to. Yeah. And then you see stuff like them saying, we're getting away from the robots.txt stuff. And I would think that over the next 10 years that everything will sort of move in the direction of Google just deciding, what your sitemap is and not really sort of needing your help on any of that. You agree?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that no-follow example is, I always thought no-follow was a hint, and the idea that you shouldn't chase no-follow links because they're worthless,
me too,
has always been a folly for me. Any kind of link is important. As the Dave Davis example says, you've got a no-follow link, it's still a relationship between two pages, and that's fundamentally
important. And they can see that, so there must be value attached to it. Exactly.
Exactly. And the other thing is, you're saying, it's a brilliant point. They're reducing reliance on robots.txt. They're reducing reliance on sitemaps. They're reducing their reliance on human beings who are completely fallible, who are rubbish at this kind of thing, and we get it wrong so often. There are so many people not doing their job that Google have to stop relying on us because we're just not up to the task.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to know, and this is a tangent, but I would love to know how effective or ineffective the disavow tool is at this point. I wonder if they're just saying, yeah, we can see that that's a spammy, area of the web. We're just not going to consider that in your backlink portfolio, or we're gonna value it less. We're going to devalue it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they said. They're saying they can do that. Whether they can do it quite as effectively as they like to make out is another question, but they're certainly doing it a lot better than they used to. And that's another example of them relying on people and then saying, well, actually, people aren't sufficiently reliable. They're not sufficiently good at their jobs. We're going to have to do without them. From what I've seen, they've moved way beyond the disavow tool. With some exceptions, but they still have the manual penalties. I saw one go through the other day.
Really? Wow.
Well, with Dejan from Australia.
Yeah, I know.
Who had his whole site wiped out because he hadn't cleaned up his backlinks properly.
Oh, I saw that. That's right. Yep. And it was old, and it was. Did he ever get any reversal from that?
Yeah, he contacted them. He disavowed the links that were left. He sent in his reconsideration request. It was removed pretty quickly, but I think he was very shocked. I think kind of everybody's pretty shocked. He was saying that these are old links that we just didn't think would be important. So I think Google have got a good grip on it, but they haven't got a grip on it 100%. But that's always going to be the case. And this is also, if you remember, it's a manual penalty. So it's somebody looking at it. It wasn't the machine who got it wrong. It was a person who got it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Tristram, is there any commentary or questions or anything that we should add to this particular part of the discussion before I move on?
Nothing at the moment. I'll keep checking on the questions. There's quite a lot of conversation going in the questions at the moment, questions being answered, but nothing direct to that. I am, just for anyone watching, I'm going to drop in the link of the information that Clayton was just showing us. So you can keep an eye on that and have a read up on yourself. So
Yeah, this Rand Fishkin ranking factor. It's a really interesting read. If you know Rand, you understand that he's really theoretical, which in some cases is great. Trying to understand what Google's vision is as a whole is really great. Some of the stuff that Jason's hinting about, he talks about. So this is a really great read. The next part of this, and let's move on before we run out of time, is just talking a little bit about how to read customer behavior. For all of the technological advancements that Google's making with their algorithm, trying to sort out how to rank the most valuable sites that will give the user what they want when they want it. There is still a lot a long way to go on reading customer behavior in their tracking tools. I think we can all agree. Google Analytics is a beast, and it's vast. And if you're new to it, or if you're stuck on one thing and you can't quite figure it out, it can be frustrating. How to read customer behavior, totally different animal. I've really found a lot of relief and success in trying to read customer behavior with event tracking in Google Tag Manager. This is phenomenal. And I don't know if you're familiar with the specific functionality in Google Analytics, but there is sort of this reverse goal path in the event section of Google Analytics, where you can see all the events in chronological order that a customer triggered or didn't trigger and rather dropped. This is how it looks. And this is not one of the 3 dashboards, but this is a great way to read customer behavior. What are some of the sort of tricks or go-tos that you use, Jason?
Yeah, I don't think I'm as advanced as you are with this kind of analysis.
Google Analytics is your go-to, right?
Yeah, Google Analytics is what I use. I do loads of segmentation. That's my favorite tool, and to be honest with you, in this particular part of it, it's really not something I look at a great deal. So I'll have to leave the real expert on Google Analytics to keep us all up to date.
Segmentation is a phenomenal tool. Don't undervalue it. This is a really great way to try and see some of the demographics, which can lead into tips and some foresight into what your customer behavior is.
No, I think I was putting myself down a little bit. I tend to segment, and I segment by demographics and by pages. But I do it kind of by hand, because I find I've got a degree in economics and I specialize in statistics. I find that when I see numbers and they don't make sense, that's when I get the great insights. And when I'm looking at standardized dashboards, that doesn't always come through. So I tend to dig around a lot kind of manually.
Yeah, and I totally get that. One of the cool things about events in Google Tag Manager is you can place them on anything, and for any type of behavior. Even a scroll could be an event. So event tracking, this is the part of the presentation where I say, make a note of event tracking and get into it. It is really helpful, really valuable. In this particular example, I'm just sorting it by country, by area of the world, by the first, second, third, and then there's a fourth and fifth event that allow me to say how far into this process did folks get. Another really great way to understand and act on customer behavior, and this one is probably obvious, but I would love if we could get, by a show of hands or a show of an emoji, somebody that would admit that hasn't done this. So if I'm going to tell you what it is here, and you tell me if you've neglected to do this strategy on your website. And it's simple. It's go to Google Analytics, go to the landing page breakdown of most popular landing pages, sort out the crap that you don't need, and just look at the sort of the core landing pages that you know are important for your website, and then go and look for a super high bounce rate, and then optimize based on that bounce rate. How simple is that? You know, you'll sort of know that there's some typical characteristics of bounce rates based on the type of page that it is. You know, blogs are typically longer or lower bounce rate. People stay on the website longer and typically click through. A sales page might be shorter, but if you've got an idea for what those standards are for the different types of pages on your website, go and look for the anomalies, like the one you see on the screen here, 92% bounce rate. This is terrible. The exit percentage is high. I would say once a month, go through and look at what's super high, pull it out, and then either put a heat map on it, do some tracking, and find out why people are bouncing and optimize it that way. Okay.
Just before we carry on, I think that's a really good point. And mixing what you just showed us there in with a tool like Hotjar or the events that you were saying in Google Tag Manager really starts to seamlessly piece all these kind of little pieces of the puzzle together. And I just had another little bit on the Google Tag Manager events. One great example from Al Whiteman, actually. I'll chuck a link into his Twitter. Great guy to check out and follow. Very knowledgeable. He showed me and represented kind of one of the clients he was working for, and basically showed it to me like almost like a supermarket or like a shop window, where it's like if you've got the top of your website all the way to the bottom, you know, popular products at the top, less popular products down below, but you tag that, essentially you tag that up in the right way, and then you can start to see exactly how popular certain products are. And then that moves on to, so say you were a company that doesn't sell your own products, but you sell other products, a company like ASOS, Robert Dyers, something like that, B&Q off the top of my head. You as that business, that really gives you the capacity to then go back to the people, you know, selling the products to you to then sell on, to say, actually, if we put you in this position, you'll get more click-through sales, you know. And that's a similar model that supermarkets have, where it's like, if you want to be right next to the till for chocolate, sweet stuff like that, it costs this much. You want to be higher up, it costs this much. You want to be lower down, it costs that much. You know, it's just fascinating when you start to piece all these little bits together you're talking about, Clayton. You really start to demystify a lot of it. It just starts to bring it all together. Anyway, sorry, carry on. No,
this is the exact sample that you're looking at here. It's a screenshot of popular luxury candy boutique in the United States, and they probably have 500 SKUs, 500 different products. So doing this type of research is extremely valuable to make decisions like, hey, we've got only a little bit of this particular product over here. How can we sell out of it and get rid of that inventory? Or, hey, we're running this partnership with a major, TV brand or other type of food brand, and we want to make sure that it gets off to the right start. Where should we put that? Not just as a dedicated page on the website, but in relationships to other products that might couple well with them as a package or something like that.
Exactly.
And the event tracking is the only way in such a large scale type of situation that you're able to place this recorded data points in such a way that it tells a story that lets you make interesting and valuable decisions. Absolutely. Okay, so the last part of this, and we've got 15 more minutes or so, I think, are the 3 dashboards. This first one, and I've put the bit.ly at the bottom here for you to look at and install on your own. I'm just going to exit out of my presentation, and I'm going to show you the dashboard live, because these screenshots don't really do it justice. But it's all about goal completion and demographics. Now, keep in mind, before we do this and get into it, this really works best when you're using a platform like Keyword Hero that allows you to uncover that not provided data in your Google Search Console. You know how Google Search Console has all of the clicks and all of the keyword search. The platforms like Keyword Hero allow you to pipe that data into your Google Analytics, and then it allows you to create dashboards like this. So for this first one, can you see my live screen here?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So this is a dashboard that I love. Again, it's on this luxury candy boutique. And it's basically all around goal completions by interesting pieces of data. And you can sort of tweak this to be customized to exactly what you want it to do. For us, it's important to understand unique visitors. It's important to understand what days of the week in a chronological way, not just of the week, but we do a lot of like promotions and partnerships with major brands. So we really need to see the completion rate on a chronological way, out of 100 or out of whatever our goals are. We've got a lot of static goals set up. The age and sex demographics for this particular project are really important. So for us, having goal completions by age is really important. You can see that it skews very young. And when I say very young, I mean 25 to 34. But for this demographic, that's important because we can translate this information into budgets for social media ad spend and things like that. I always love having a channel grouping. We're all big SEOs here on this webinar, and in many cases, when you put a channel grouping up, SEO is number one or a very close number one. So you can see the channel grouping by goal completion, which channel is completing most of the goals, and then the keywords and pages and landing pages that are completing most of those. These are piped in from the Keyword Hero data, which, by the way, it's a little complicated to figure it out. If you want to reach out to me, I can show you how to set up having the not provided data added to your Google Analytics platform. You can also go to Keyword Hero and they will do it. They have a freemium version that just does it automatically, and it's great. Also, goal completions by most popular landing pages, page views. And for us, it's interesting because we do a lot of very geo-targeted stuff by city. So this is dashboard number one, customer behavior dashboard number one. All right, let me go to the second one.
just in between, we've got a couple of questions coming in. I wonder if I can just drop them to you guys quickly.
Sure.
It was just regarding, I think people have got a question around kind of the high bounce rate, high exit rate. And really, let's pick this one. Can you get into detail of the process of kind of debugging higher bounce rates on certain pages?
Sure.
And then we've got, can you clarify if we should be finding top landing pages that have a big bounce rate or top exit pages and then optimize?
Sure. So I was saying before, and I think it's important to mention or to understand that different types of pages behave in different types of ways. And like let's use B2B SaaS as an example. You might have customer stories as a type of page. You might have a product type of pages. You might have industry type of pages. If you can group those pages together and look at them historically and their bounce rates over a longer period of time, you'll start to see that they all follow similar trends with each other. So we've got different categories with different sort of baseline bounce rates. So the first step is understanding what those baseline bounce rates are by just looking at the history of that same type of page over a period of time, let's say 6 months. And then if you see one that stands out with an extremely high bounce rate, that's a red flag, right? If it doesn't meet the norm of all the other blogs, let's say, then you're not doing something right. Sometimes you can look at that page versus another similar page visually and see what's wrong with it. Like with a blog, it might be, oh, look, everybody's bouncing because the blog's only 200 words. That's pretty obvious. When you're looking at the different pages side by side and trying to figure out why one bounce rate is higher than the other, and you can't tell visually, then you really need to get to measuring it. And the best way to measure it, in my opinion, is a heat map. I like Hotjar, but there's a bunch of heat maps out there, Crazy Egg, and some others. And what you want to do is install the heat map and start tracking where the traffic is clicking. And many heat maps will have mouse movements recordings, and some heat maps will have scroll tracking, which means that it will show you how far down most of the people got on the page. And by looking at that heat map data, you can piece together whether your call to action isn't obvious enough, or maybe the call to action is too far down the page, or maybe even sometimes you start to realize that this page's content isn't the intent of what the person that landed on this page wanted to see. Maybe they were looking for something how-to, and you're serving them a bunch of products, and so they bounce. So heat maps, I think, are probably a good first step for that question. Jason, do you have any additional insight here?
Yeah, well, I've had quite a few examples recently of clients with high bounce rates on specific pages, particularly on blogs. And there are two questions for me, one of which is, as you were saying earlier on, is the call to action obvious enough? And sometimes there isn't even a call to action, i.e. a reason to go into the site. And I think people tend to forget that when a user comes in from Google who doesn't know your brand, they're completely out of context. So on that blog page, you need to say who we are and what we do with that proposition, the value proposition that might bring them further into the site. And an example of a kind of page with quite a high bounce rate would be a page where, a how-to, for example, where I've got the answer and I don't need to see anything else in the site. So you have to incite me to come in further and investigate the brand more. And I think that for me, in terms of bounce rate, that's the biggest crime I see committed by at least my clients, is they don't explain who they are and what they do. For me, that's fundamental. And then give me a reason to keep going on in that site and find out more about either the brand or the product or both.
Absolutely. Tristan, does that sound like it's a good start?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, it's sort of going a bit more low level. It's quite interesting, you know, of just working with reasonably large brands that you would expect them to kind of be doing this, the obvious stuff where it's like they've got a fantastic blog, people just driving huge amounts of traffic, you know, about I don't know, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but they're going to the blog, it's great, but they haven't put any internal links on that blog to other elements in their website. Is that another blog piece they can read further more in-depth information? is it a cheeky kind of upsell because you've been talking about this product indirectly? And then, you're sitting down with them and saying, yeah, you need to encourage. And then that's the light bulb moment goes on. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's obvious, isn't it? But just stepping back to your point on Hotjar and Crazy Egg, for anyone watching now, you can use Crazy Egg free for 30 days. And Hotjar, I think you can use it for free for up to 3 pages. So it's well worth testing. But I think it's fascinating, again, talking with clients once you put that in place and then they see that no one's scrolling to the bottom of my page. Yeah. I assumed that they were. And I think it might be Hotjar's got the mouse over or click functionality where you start to see people thinking they can use the website in a certain way, but the website doesn't work in that way. And so I think that's fascinating to, is there an image or something they're hovering over there so you can make it clickable, or just how are you reassessing that you're looking at your site to encourage people to kind of go deeper and experience more of your brand and hopefully rank better.
I'd like to build on that. I mean, the fact that we all tend to think that everybody thinks like us and everyone acts like us. We're the star of our own film, and the whole world functions in the way that we perceive it to function. And what you were saying about we assume people scroll to the bottom because that's what I would do. It's really important to say, well, actually, you aren't your users. And brands, a lot of the time, is slightly off topic, but you read the copy in the pages, and it's we, I, me, mine.
Yeah.
And it should be you, and then perhaps a we to get them involved. But I think it was Cal Giddis was saying on Booking.com's last page before you click to confirm that you're actually taking the booking, there are 25 times the word you appears 25 times.
Nice.
And it's so well done, you don't notice it, but it really affects the way you're thinking. So that's slightly off topic, but that really made a point for me is stop thinking that everybody else thinks like you. Stop thinking people have the same point of view as you, and look at it from your user's point of view. And preferably, as you said with Hotjar or Crazy Egg, analyze it.
Yep. A lot of people and marketers are guilty of this. A lot of clients, some clients I've worked with are convinced that they know exactly who their audience is. So
and what they do.
They might not need a heat map, but I guarantee you, if you don't have a heat map and after this you go and install one and let it run for a couple of weeks, I guarantee you, you'll learn something about what your audience is doing and why. That's why the point I was trying to make was sometimes you might not see much on the heat map and you'll realize, oh, I don't have the right content on this page. This page ranks for, how to measure. I have a client that sells clothing, and we found a page. This is a real story, and they're ranking for a lot of different keywords around how to measure a men's pants. So the waist, the inseam, the cuff, the whole thing, all the way down to the floor. And it ranks for probably 35, 40 keywords around the various keywords around how to measure, pants. And then you get to the page, and it's a small chart around, the waist size and the length. And then under it is just a bunch of products to buy. So of course people are bouncing. They want a bunch of information about how to do this yourself and where to put the tape measure and all of this stuff. And we're serving them barely any content about that, but a bunch of content and trying to get them to purchase.
Yeah, so sorry, my point earlier on about people forget to explain who they are and what they do and have the upsell or the call to action. You're saying that some people overdo it and that there is a nice middle ground to take.
Absolutely, yeah. But heat maps, this is the answer in short, I think. Heat maps.
Brilliant.
Okay, you guys want to see this second dashboard?
Yeah, I think we've got about 11 minutes left, so let's crack through.
Yeah, let's get through it. So this second one looks like this. Some more interesting stuff on it. Again, my favorite part of this whole thing is the search terms on the right-hand side. This is coupled with having that keyword hero view on your Google Analytics and allows you to sort of see how many people searched for it, how many transactions, if you're on an e-commerce page, what that looked like, average order value, where those transactions are coming from, revenue, all sorts of interesting stuff. And we won't stay on that one too long. And let's just take a look at the third one, which is exactly. Now, this is my favorite one. And again, you need to have the not provided keywords unlocked or added to the view in your Google Analytics. But this one I like best because it shows specifically long tail and how many words in the phrase and their goal completion and their bounce rate and their sessions by the different short-term or long-term keywords. So this gives a really great idea of what's working best. Is it these long tail, bottom of the funnel, transactional type of keywords? Or is it the short ones that are, you know, two words in the keyword? And this I don't think that I've seen in Google Analytics just sort of naturally ever, but it really gives a good idea of whether the keywords that you think you want to rank for are actually driving revenue. And you can see, for example, in this first line, this Super Mario Brothers plus Sugarfina Power Up, it's not a keyword that it indicates any sort of transactional type of thing. It's just a product keyword, and it completes, and the goal completions are really high on it. So those are the three dashboards. I know we rushed through them, but this deck and those dashboards are available at the bottom of the slide, or we'll post, SEMrush posts the recording of these webinars on their website for all to see, and you'll be able to get those right there. If you have any questions about them or about how to install the other piece with the not provided keywords, get in touch with me. I'm happy to help answer any of these questions. And I think we've got a little bit of time to answer something now. Tristan?
We do. Just to quickly let you know, I've been dropping those links into the chat, so everyone seems fairly happy with getting those, which is awesome. Yeah, we do have one question, just going kind of right back to the start. Neil was asking, dying to know if it's better to drive paid traffic to a separate page or to organic traffic, the behavior generally being really different in most cases. What are your thoughts, chaps?
That's a great question. Jason, you want to take that one?
Well, for me, in paid traffic and search at least, the keyword's the same, the search is the same, the intent's the same. There isn't any reason to have a different landing page. That, from my point of view, I do a lot of DSA, dynamic search ads. Dynamic search ads, I come from the SEO world. So what I would say is if my SEO is good, Google's understood what my page is about, it's understood what the intent is. And if my organic is converting, I should be able to switch that over to DSA. And the two landing pages would therefore be the same. There are some cases where that's not going to be the case, but from my point of view, you were talking about SEO for localized searches with lots of terms. I have a client who has exactly that. They have 250 towns in France where they sell MOTs. And we've managed to do the SEO incredibly well. We're ranking #1. And the DSA, we're getting a CPA 3 times lower than the competition. So my point of view is the intent isn't different, therefore the pages should be the same. And if they're not, you should start thinking about why. And in some cases, they will be different, or the need will be different, but I can't see an enormous number of reasons why that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, I see some scenarios where somebody will have a paid landing page that they've only driven traffic to and will start accidentally ranking on that page for the keyword organically that they want to rank for, and then ask me, oh, well, if this is not set up for SEO, should we just create a new one? And you sort of have to say, look, if Google's liking this page and it's possible for us to not screw with the conversion of it, then yeah, it's possible to leave it for both purposes, paid and organic. What do you think, Tristan? Do you do mostly organic or paid stuff?
I do mainly organic. My business partner heads up our PPC, and I know, you know, when we do work together with particular clients, we, you know, a lot of the time we do send both sets of traffic to the same page, but I think it's kind of circumstantial based, really. You know, you've really got to take each case as it comes. Some companies it works well for, and some companies, you know, it depends. So you're doing lead generation or something like that. Yeah, I don't have a definitive answer, but I would say take it case by case.
Well, I think a lot of companies do have separate landing pages simply because it's two different teams, and you're a team, the two of you together, working together, and that isn't always the case. So the SEO people don't want the AdWords people stepping on their toes and vice versa. So we get this impression in the industry that everybody's got these two different landing pages and that there must be a reason for it, especially when we're looking at our competition. That's what they're doing. The fact that your competition are doing something doesn't mean it's necessarily right. They might be really dumb. And so from that point of view, you're kind of saying, if your two teams aren't talking to each other, you need separate pages because otherwise they're going to mess with each other's landing pages. If the two teams aren't talking together or you're doing DSA, it's going to be the same team, they're the same page, in my opinion.
Absolutely, I agree. And by the way, plug for SEMrush. One of the best tools is the paid ad research section of SEMrush, where you can look at the competition and just spy on their landing pages and see what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And I think Jason's right. Oftentimes, when you think that the major player in the competitive landscape knows everything about what they're doing, go look at their landing pages. Sometimes they're trash.
And sorry, that's another interesting point is when you look at the phenomenon of the blank page, creating something on a blank page is really, really difficult. However, coming in afterwards and saying that's absolute rubbish, it would be better if it was done this way, is really, really easy. And if you apply that to your competitors, go and look at your competitors and saying that's really rubbish. It tells you exactly what not to do. And then when you then apply it to yourself and you manage to stop thinking I, me, mine and looking at yourself with a little bit of, what would you call it? Without thinking too much about yourself, I'm thinking in French, a bit of the recul. You can actually look at yourself and be autocritical in the same way that you would be about your competitors by pointing out all their weaknesses.
Yep, that's really important. Okay, we only got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, so I think we've got time for one more question. Kind of right back to the start, we didn't have an opportunity to answer this one. It's from Tori. She said, can you please explain once again, how do sitemaps influence no follow or follow cues? So I don't know whether that was slightly misunderstood when we were discussing earlier.
Well, there's this whole, you can upload an XML sitemap. And Jason, you're going to have to fact check me on this, but as I understand it, a little bit ago, Google came out and sort of talked a little bit about how that they do a really good job of understanding the site structure of the website. And I don't think they exactly said you don't have to have a sitemap, but they said pretty much we got it. Is that about right, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with priorities, they're now saying there's no point in using the priority tag at all. We pay absolutely no attention to it. I think a sitemap is really useful. A sitemap is already useful just in your own mind. So you think, I have all these pages. I tend to use a sitemap to say to my clients, how many pages do you think you've got? And they'll say 300 or whatever, or 500. And you say, right, you've got 800 in the sitemap, and in the index, you've got 2,000, there's a problem. So it's a really nice way to help us organize ourselves properly. And in terms of the sitemap itself, Google comes through the sitemap, checks the sitemap, and if you've got the last modified date, potentially it will then go to that page as a priority page because it can see it's been changed recently. The problem that a lot of people have is their sitemap isn't updated. With something like WordPress, if you're using Yoast, it will be updated so the dates are correct. And that's a nice, helpful signal to Google to say this page has been changed, go and have a look at it.
Awesome. And so I think, we've got 1 minute left. So let's just wrap it up. If I could take one top tip from each of you from today, what would it be?
I'd say that customer behavior does influence SEO. So pay attention to it. This is what Google cares about. So it should be what we care about.
Jason.
And I would add to that, even if it doesn't affect your SEO, it affects your bottom line because they're buying more from you.
Definitely. And I guess for me, always keep the kind of customer user in mind and work for them because they're the ones that are going to make you the money at the end of the day. And if you haven't installed heat maps, do it. It might change your world. So awesome. And so as I just round off today, don't forget, we've got the Global Marketing Day on the 30th of October with these two lovely chaps, however my fingers are pointing at you. 30th of October. I'll just pop the link into the YouTube comments now. So sign up. these guys are great. They're going to just give you much more knowledge. And yeah, thanks for everyone joining in today. It's been another fantastic SEMrush live webinar. Thank you, Clayton. Thank you, Jason. And I think we're out. See you later.
Thanks, gentlemen. See ya.
Thank you, guys. Really big
Bye-bye.
pleasure being there.